congratulations to Zach, Resurgam JSC, Ryan, and Dems for winning our free drinking glasses that we just released and are for sale for other people, but not you guys. We will be in touch with you. We will email you or contact you somehow. We'll be in touch. Congratulations. You win a glass.
And for the record, they are 7-ounce whiskey glasses. Alex bought one. Was like, wow, this is a really small glass. I'm like, oh no, it's not. Yeah, we aren't giants. It is a small glass. It's for whiskey.
Yeah. But you don't have to just drink whiskey. You could drink.
It's for whatever you want, but it is 7 ounces.
Right. Okay, so a couple weeks ago, we kind of announced that we wanted to do the things that we've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
Can you remind me what your thing is?
Okay. So we're calling this the scary thing with, capital T, the scary thing. The main quest, it's the thing that, it almost sounds too big, but like the thing you want to do with your life, or at least a major thing you want to do with your life, something that you care about. For me, I work, I have a day job, and I build things for other people, and that's fine, and I like that. But what I really want is to build things for me that I care about, that I think the world needs, or is lacking. Just these things, ideas I have in my head of the world needs this, and I want to build that, and I want to.
You mean like an app, like apps or programs or?
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I'll go ahead and just say what I'm working on right now. I care a lot about the idea of spaced repetition. I see that as one of these incredible fundamental tools to just the way we think and operate. And I see it as being, I think we both do, but I see it as being on the level of just writing, having a notebook where you write things or take notes. Like using a spaced repetition system to me is like that vital. But I'm not terribly happy with what's out there. No disrespect to any of the systems there. Like I think Anki is amazing and all the other implementations of that, but they're not quite what I want. I want something that isn't so much tailored to somebody who's studying for a test or a chemistry exam or something like that, but something that's built to work with just you in this extremely frictionless, pleasure to use sort of way where you just all the time, every day, you're just putting stuff in it and you're reviewing things, and like it's kind of tailored for that, where it's not clunky, it's not difficult, it's not really built around the idea of downloading a big deck of cards and reviewing that and like getting those memorized. It's around just you using it for yourself all the time. That's like, there's a few ideas that are kind of along those lines, but that's the one that I'm decided that, okay, this is the thing that I think should be there out in the world, and it's something that I want to try to build for myself and then for everybody else who might see that as valuable too. So that's like my first major quest.
And what has kept you from doing this before?
Well,
like, why was this so scary?
This particular idea is reasonably recent, like within the past couple years from doing this podcast. But there's been somewhat similar ideas that I've had before, or some ideas that aren't even that lofty. It's just I want to build something that I sell for me, to where I'm the company and I'm not just working on somebody else's thing where, they're the boss, right? This idea has been around in my head for a long time. I've found notes, little kind of journal entry type things from 10 years ago saying the same stuff. And the reason it didn't work was me. It wasn't, who knows if those ideas were good ones or bad ones, or if they would have been successful or not. But the problem was me in that I was unable to work on this for a sustained period of time. I might go through a month or two of really intense interest to the point where it disrupts my life and that's all I'm focusing on, almost obsession, but then it burns out, or I'm not able to kind of back up and see the big picture, and I wind up spending all my time on something that doesn't really matter that much. It's just different levels of failure of myself, like my own behavior, my own understanding of how I operate, not being able to do things consistently over a very long period of time, not be able to put my energy into the stuff that's kind of messy and important but not that fun to work on. All those different failures, those came together to cause me to be unsuccessful in that effort every single time for a long time now. What's yours?
Okay, my thing. All right, there's this artist that I've been a fan of for a very long time. He used to work as a concept artist.
This isn't James Gurney.
No, I figured I'd pick a different artist to gawk about today, but
Okay.
James Gurney also did the same thing. But anyway, Pete Moorbacher, he used to be this concept artist that worked in games. I think he worked for Magic the Gathering, stuff like that. Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy art. He was a concept artist for like 5 years. And he started thinking, well, why do I do this art? He's being paid for his time.
Yeah.
So he does the art, the company gets the art and then owns it. And then as soon as he walks away from that, he's got nothing. So what he started doing was, and it took him a while to kind of get to this model of things, but he started creating his own art based on stuff that he wanted to do. And then he would just start selling that. So he would own the JPEG or the rights to that art, and then he would turn it into products. So every month he releases a new painting, and then that painting becomes like an asset to him that he then just sells directly to people through products, through books, through prints, through a bunch of different avenues of.
Yeah, you showed me like, I want keycaps or mouse pads or something even, right? Like,
Yeah.
Just everything.
Yeah, like what are they called? Game mats, or I don't know. People play games on it. Anyway, he's turned his art into a bunch of different products and a lot of different ways of making money off of art. And so he creates once a month something that that he wants to create. He's his own boss. He makes whatever he wants to. He has this perfect little schedule where, every month he's putting out a new piece of work that no one's telling him how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just gets money on it, and the business just expands forever. Like,
So
every
the art
year he's
equivalent
got-
of what I'm talking about.
yeah, it's this exponential growth of art, but that's more the business side of it. Basically, he creates whatever he wants to create, and then gets paid to create more of that. So it's the holy grail of being a creative person. You want to work on what you want to work on, and then also just get paid for it. So I've been wanting to do something like that. Like, he puts out a painting and then also a little story blurb or something that goes with the painting. So I've been kind of eyeing his work for a long time, thinking, okay, I want to do something very similar to that. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to create my own work and then just kind of build on it. Like, maybe each painting is related to the next painting. Maybe it's all part of this bigger story. And then eventually when I have, 50 pieces, maybe they all go into an art book. Maybe this, maybe that, whatever. I have a bunch of different ideas on what I could do if I had a bunch of art. But in the last 5-7 years, every time I get started on working on that, I get another freelance piece of work, and then I just jump on that and work on that, get the money from that, and then I'm back at the beginning again. So it's been years, and I've gotten absolutely nowhere because it's just so hard to say no to the freelance stuff. So the scary thing for me is now saying no and beginning this thing that I've been wanting to do for a long time.
And you talked to me offline, but you finished what you swear up and down, cross your heart, hope to die, is your last freelance job. You finished that this weekend, right?
Yes, I have told my clients that I will not be working freelance for quite a while, which has been very difficult to do. I have said no to money this last like few months. I'm just declining jobs. And then, yes, I just finished my last piece of freelance work yesterday, halfway through the day. I sent out the email and I'm done.
All right, so you're starting your quest like tomorrow, right?
I'm starting my quest yesterday as soon as I hit send on the email.
All right, so you're starting it now. So here's my first question for you. Do you really think that the thing that's kept you from doing this has been too much freelance work to do?
No, I think it's a very small part. I think mostly it's just there's so this whole like art thing that I want to do. I've built it up so much in my head over the last half decade or so that it becomes very scary and very, I don't know, like it's got to mean everything and it's got to be the best thing I've ever done. And, you know, it's pretty cliche and typical of what people do, I think, is, you know, this thing is me, so it's got to be the best thing I've ever done, whereas everything else is for other people, so it's a lot easier to shift the blame that way. Or
there's a reason why we're calling it the scary thing. I mean, same boat for me. You know, I have these ideas of, oh, you know, I spend all my time working on this thing that's, you know, it's a business, it's whatever, it's not. I've got these ideas in my head of, this would be so great if I could build this thing. The world needs this thing. It would resonate with people. They would love it, and it'd be so valuable to them. That's a really nice dream to have, just kind of laying in the back of your head. Of, man, I just spent another week doing this thing that I didn't really care about, but I could have been doing this. Like, it's this fantasy that's just always there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there's always this dream of, oh, well, I'll do it soon. You know, not soon. Surely in a couple years, I'll be living this life, this parallel reality. But when you actually start to do it and start to make real effort towards it, I mean, you might kill it. I could build this thing that I have in my head and nobody cares. Everyone just goes, oh, this is not that different, or that just doesn't work for me. And it just, you know, fizzles out and dies. And then all I've really done is spend a ton of time creating this thing and then destroyed my dream. And now I just go back to work and think, this is it. This is all there is for me.
Yeah. If you do it and it fails, you have squashed that fantasy in the back of your mind that gives you hope. So, okay, let me walk you through from yesterday, because I need advice on this. So yesterday I sent out the email, I finished the freelance, and I'm like, God, it feels good. So I bask in the glory of completing a task that I've been working on for months now. I finally finished it. I feel great. So the rest of the day I just kind of, you know, relax, I take it easy. I kind of, you know, just straighten up my studio, kind of just get ready for this next great adventure. Just taking it easy, and I'm excited. So then I wake up, I go to sleep, and then I wake up this morning. And the second I wake up, my brain it's like it exploded. And there's just fireworks going off everywhere, just explosions, and my head actually feels hot because there's so many ideas and so many things I need to think about, I have to think about, I want to think about, and I'm just excited, and I'm just so excited. So, I go downstairs, I get my coffee, and I'm all ready to go for the day. So I sit down, and I'm just drowning in all of these ideas, all of these things that I've been thinking about for years. You know, I have stories that I need to write. I need to figure out, you know, how to write stories. I need to talk to my friend that's, you know, really good at world building and fantasy writing or whatever. I got to talk to him. I got to talk to my artist friend. I need to figure out, you know, how to draw, you know. how do you be a good artist? What's my process going to be? What's the style of finish I'm going to do? What's my website going to look like? How am I going to make this into a business? How am I going to grow this? What's the social media going to look like? What's the website going to look like? What am I going to do? How do I do this? And there's just so many thoughts going through my head. And I realize, at first it feels like just pure excitement and happiness. And then I start realizing it's like I've been building this tower, and then all of a sudden I'm in the shadow of this enormous monument, and it's getting dark and getting cold. I can't see the sun anymore. And I'm like, oh God, like all of this wonderful excitement has now turned to this tombstone, and I should have built it like stairs, but instead I just built it straight up and down, and it could trap me here. I don't know. I started recognizing it as being the precursor to perfectionism and all the curses that come with that. Mm-hmm. So the rest of the day, I kind of flipped, or I changed gears. I tried to back up and slow down. And I'm like, okay, this has gotten too big. I need to break it down. I need to simplify it. I need to make it easy, not hard. I need to take these expectations I have and squash them and try to turn this excitement into a long-term way of thinking. Okay, here's a quick example. This feeling made me think about the situation I was in. When I first got my job, concept artist for this company, I'm probably a couple months in, 2 or 3 months in, and things are going, okay. I'm a nervous new guy, but it's going okay. And we get this project, and it's this really cool project. It was something like, like a Jules Verne type, I don't know, place that we got to design. And the budget was, off the charts. And everyone is just so excited to do this project. So we get done with the meeting, and the next phase is for the concept artists, me, to do a bunch of concepts and, paintings and drawings, whatever, to build this design. And one guy comes up to me and he goes, "Oh my God, man, I'm so excited to see what you're going to do. I just can't wait. It's going to be the most epic thing ever. It's going to be amazing." And I'm like, "Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, it's really going to be amazing." And so I get so worked up and so excited, and I'm just thrilled because this is going to be the coolest thing I've ever worked on. It's going to be the best drawings I've ever done. And of course, whatever line I put down, it's not good enough. No matter what I do, it isn't good enough. And so I end up totally tanking. It was my first real bomb in my career. It was just so bad. I remember I had to just leave the office and walk. Like I was pacing, trying to figure out what to do. I could not figure it out. I was too worked up, and it crushed me. And it was so bad and so embarrassing. So I was feeling that this morning, that not the failure part, because I haven't even really started yet, other than, right, planning stages. So I'm trying to be very careful what I do. And I'm wondering how you've approached, long-term plans, or if you haven't really, run into that problem. You haven't felt like that.
Oh, no, I have. This is all very familiar. So,
all right. You're a few weeks ahead of me because you started a little bit ago. I want to hear your thoughts on how you kind of dealt with the long-term planning and how to come up with the structure.
I would actually say I'm a couple months ahead. I've been really pretty heads down on this for a while. Okay.
And wait. To be fair, I have worked on this. I've picked at this for years.
Okay, right.
So I have a lot there. Right. I just don't. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. It's a big question and it's a big answer. So we'll kind of look at different parts of it. The excitement phase, that it's kind of looking at the tower / terrifying monument that you're going to be crushed under. So excitement is a good thing. That's just energy and it's
Mm-hmm.
engagement, and you're focused on this thing, right? Part of that is fantasy. Part of it is just dreaming about this amazing future that you haven't even really thought through yet. In the same way that you can be terrified of a million different things that are mutually exclusive. You can be afraid of going to a party because you're going to spill your drink on the host and then also trip and also say something rude to somebody. Like, you have all these different things that are going to be terrible that are going to happen, and they can't all happen. Only a couple of them conceivably could, but you're still worried about all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Something kind of like that happens when you're thinking about this idea that you're imagining all these amazing good outcomes, but they're mutually exclusive. Like, if you're building an art universe, it can't be everything all at once. Um,
Right.
as a very different side note, I just watched today this movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I can't talk about it because it's just the most insane thing I've ever seen. But just to the audience, I have never in my life recommended a movie to anyone because I don't really like movies, but I'm recommending this movie to you. It's
What's
just
it called?
incredible. Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's a Chinese film, I think. It's so good, and it actually relates to what we're talking about exactly. Anyway, I'm sorry. I have to. Except for Mom, don't watch this movie. I know Mom listens to these. Mom, you won't like this, but everyone else besides Mom, this is a great movie. Anyway, sorry. I'm so like pulled away by this movie that I
Well,
just
you
finished
you
watching.
just watched it like an hour ago, right?
Yes, yeah, and I like haven't finished processing it. But it fits into this idea of all these different parallel realities that anyway, okay. As you get excited about this thing, that's part of what happens is you're fantasizing. You're seeing all these different possibilities. And that's not a bad place to be. I think the important thing to do when you're in that mindset is to just capture as much of that as you can. So just write stuff down. Don't think about it too hard. Don't anything. Just get your journal out or type if that's faster, whatever, but just like put stuff down and just ride that wave for as long as it lasts, because it won't really last all that long. Like, just get stuff out so you can just kind of see your ideas and build out this landscape. And then once you kind of come off of that, and this is what I did. I've got all these different ideas and these different, like, oh, I could do this and that and this would be so amazing. And it's just this big pile of stuff. But once you've sort of come down off that wave, then you can step back and look at this pile of things, these ideas and fantasies and everything, and then just start to think, okay, not all of this can exist at the same time. I'm gonna have to pursue one timeline. So you start thinking about that. You start looking at the ideas that feel the best, that feel coherent. It's you're almost reading the tea leaves a little bit and saying, ah, yeah, these things are cool. I really like this. This idea is all right, but it doesn't really fit with the rest, and that kind of stuff. So you just like look at the wreckage of this fantasy trip you've had and just start to figure out, okay, what makes sense. uh, One of the this is kind of a weird thing that I've started doing, um but I think it's really valuable. If you think about a company, even a relatively small company, they usually have people in different roles, right? You have an engineer whose job is to solve problems and build things, and like, you're an engineer. And then maybe you have the project manager whose job is usually to waste everybody's time. There are sometimes good project managers. I've seen it. So I'm not totally discounting the field, but I am discounting 80% of the field. But a good project manager, if it exists, I've always said that a good project manager is kind of like a unicorn. Like, it could exist, but it probably doesn't.
I'm not commenting on it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if you imagine this like fantasy version of a project manager that's actually good at what they do, you would see the value in that role, right? So you have the engineer, you have the project manager, the unicorn project manager whose job it is to just make sure things don't fall through the cracks, and make sure the communication is fluid and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, you imagine that role. And then maybe you imagine the head of the company, and theoretically their job is to kind of look at the landscape of what's out there in the world, in the market, and try to make sure that things are going in the right direction, and all the different roles that could fit within a company. If you imagine that and say, okay, well, I'm going to be doing something where it's just me, I have to do all of that. But you can't do it all at the same time, because some of these things are just, they're just not compatible mind spaces. You can't be thinking about the big picture in CEO mode, but then also have your head down grinding away doing real work. If you're generating ideas, that's a certain way to think. If you're being critical and trying to pare things down, that's a different way to think. There's all these things that are just different. They can't happen at the same time, but you still have to do all of them. So what I've started trying to do is almost do this like role play type of thing, where you say, okay, for the next 10 minutes, I'm Mr. CEO man, and I'm going to think real hard about the direction we're headed, and whether all this stuff makes sense, and whether all this work that the engineer did was really the right kind of work, or if he wasted all his time on something else. Like I'm actually pretty like particular about it, or pretty explicit. Like, I'm CEO right now.
You should get the CEO outfit, and then when you switch to,
I've genuinely thought of at least
might
having
change.
hats to like put on and go, all right, and whatever, and then I'll have a hard hat that I'm engineer man or whatever. But genuinely, I think, defining them, even writing them down, of saying, if I'm the concept artist, then I'm the concept artist, and this is how I think, and this is what works well for me, and I'm gonna do this for this percent of the time. And then you do that, and then you have to switch and say, okay, I'm decision maker man, and that's what I'm gonna do for the next 10 minutes or whatever. But having these very distinct roles, I think, has been really helpful for me, because if not, and the way I've approached this before is to just be the engineer the whole time. I just start building stuff and throwing it together, and then never really, there is no marketing person on the team. I'm never in that mode of, okay, what is actually going to resonate with people? What is going to make them want this and think that it applies to them? But that's actually a pretty important role, and you have to be there sometimes. So anyway, I think you should begin to think that way of, if you're Mr. Concept Artist, Mr. Universe Builder, that's great. Do that, especially if that's just what you're excited about. And like I said, you have to get this down, because you won't remember this later. But just get it all down and be in that mode. But then once that is sort of passed, then say, okay, now it's time to be Mr. Decision Maker, and start thinking about what makes sense and what's actually going to turn into a real thing. And, can we pursue this idea, because this seems like it's hugely labor intensive and that's not going to make sense. And like, you have to get into that role too.
No, these are exactly the same conclusions that I came to by the end of the day. Is that good. When I woke up,
it took me a lot longer than a day to figure that out. So, well done.
Well, I'm still just theorizing, but in the beginning of the day, it was almost as if all of those different characters, those different employees, were just yelling all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to come up with deadlines, and I'm trying to come up with the process, and then I'm trying to think about art and technical stuff, and I'm thinking about money and business, and I'm all of those different characters. And then I tried to make sort of a very, very, well, first I just listed every single thing I was thinking about, within reason. And it didn't take long before I realized that, okay, I'll take one step back further and see if I can split all of these into 4 different categories. So for me, it's story, art, business, and leisure. Leisure being like, low-key reading or watching a YouTube video, something related, but it doesn't matter too much. And splitting those into 4 different categories kind of just settled everything down. And everything just kind of started falling into place, and I realized, okay, well, what's next? Next would be choosing which one is most important, right? Because now we got to order all 4 of those groups into a a hierarchy of importance. So the art category obviously goes into number one. And so that one I need to spend 70% of my time on. And then the writing, I don't know, I did like 20% or something. And then 5% for the other two. And so that art category takes my morning slot every day. So I now have sort of a schedule in place that makes sure that my priority is number one every day. So I'm excited about that. And having that is relaxing to me. But what you said about the different people, I think that's the secret. And being able, okay. So I was thinking of like the CEO version of you, or the boss man version of you.
Yeah.
Needs to choose deadlines and needs to do it in a bit of a sociopathic way where you don't really care too much about the other workers or whatever, because you're thinking big picture, and some of those problems need to be solved by those lower level employees. So the boss man you needs to think in these different terms and kind of be ruthless about it. So I was thinking, and so like coming up with deadlines obviously falls on that character part of you. Now, how do you make concrete deadlines when you're working for yourself? It's very, very difficult because you can always find a reason to push it. You can always find a reason to get out of it. So I was thinking of, okay, well, what already works for me? This podcast works pretty much because I have someone else involved that I can't let down. I have other people that, it's this whole thing that just, it's every week for the most part. They're pretty good about it.
Yeah.
And then for work, I always stick to the deadlines because it's just the way it is. There's other people involved. So I was thinking, and just announcing things on the podcast or anywhere, make it official. Like we made it official to start the scary thing, this little quest thing. And now we're doing it. Whereas we've been saying it to ourselves for years and never done it. But now we said it to each other and to a bunch of other people. And now it's official, and now we're actually doing it. So when it comes to deadlines, I want to make sure there's some sort of concrete thing holding me to that. And yeah. So that's how I'm going to try to approach it, is whenever I come up with a deadline as the CEO of my own little thing, I need to connect it to something concrete and real, and preferably another person or some sort of structure that's outside of me.
So here's the thing with deadlines. Because I'm still kind of trying to sort this out a little bit in my head, but so when I'm given a deadline, and I don't mean metaphorically by CEO version of me, I mean just actually in a job, say, hey, you have to have this done by this time, we're gonna ship it, whatever. So that can do a few things. Sometimes that just leads to a massive painful crunch, where you're working super late every day, you're totally burned out, you're miserable, you're not doing your best work, you're just having to throw time at the problem until you get it done by this day, right? And that's not great for a few reasons. One, to do something really good, you need to be working at your best, or at least as close as you can get, so that kind of crunch time never leads to great stuff. It just doesn't. But also it leads to burnout. That accumulated fatigue. And that is one of the major things that has sunk me in the past, is burnout, where I'm going so hard. And sometimes it's not, sometimes it's fun even, I'm obsessed. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. It's hard for me to disengage from it. In fact, that's more often than not the thing that has happened. So that can't be the way, because that has sunk projects before. So if a deadline causes that to happen, you're at huge risk of just burning out. Now, deadlines can do other things too. I mean, deadlines can force you to say, okay, I have this much time left, so now I need to really get down to the stuff that's very important and ignore the stuff that isn't, or not be a perfectionist. That can be a good antidote to perfectionism. So it can have good effects too. But I think
Right.
you got to be careful with that.
Yes. And I'm trying to come up with some sort of happy medium where I'm not destroying myself and art to meet a deadline. Because if I'm miserable, then it's not working and I'm just going to go right back, that then this just doesn't work at all. But if I work forever on a piece
Right.
and never turn it in, that's, I don't know. So that's one thing that I've got to figure out. And I think that just doing it over and over again will help me come up with a plan. Because right now I'm going off of zero experience
Right.
with this type of thing. So
one of the biggest things that we've talked about this a bit before, but I'm not spending every free second working on this stuff, even though I want to. I mean, I genuinely want to. If it were up to me, this is what I'd be doing all the time, and I'd be pushing off work and I'd be pushing off everything. But I'm not. Because I'm worried about that happening, of just kind of my mind exploding and then crashing and burning. Because that is what's happened before.
right.
It feels like the right thing to do, but I know from experience that it isn't. So I'm capping my time on this stuff, where I spend up to 2 hours a day, with some exceptions. Like on weekends, it can be a little bit longer, or if I'm taking time off of work, then it can be a little bit longer. But on a normal day, it's 2 hours, and that's it. So a deadline, if I said, okay, I have to have this feature done, or I have to have this problem solved by Friday, and it's Monday, that means I have 10 hours. It doesn't mean that I get to stay up until 4 a.m. working on it, which is, what has happened in the past. That's a different kind of deadline. It's I have 10 hours and this thing has to be done. So this really cool idea that I had of some super fancy special technique for implementing this thing, if that's going to take me 25 hours to build, then I can't do it. Like, it doesn't matter that I have some fantasy in my head of how cool it's going to be. I got to use something simpler. I got to make it actually happen. And that has been very effective, and it doesn't lead to that major risk of burnout that I've experienced before. So that's kind of been my implementation of a deadline, is that I don't get to spend any extra time on it. I just have to have this thing done by this date. And that's worked pretty well. It forces me to really focus up during that time and think, okay, is this avenue the right one to pursue or not? And I have to make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, I'm excited about doing this every day, because I have to cap off my time too, not by choice. Just I have to, because I got to go to work and I got to do other things. But yeah, I guess I'm just excited about doing it every day, and I think it will mitigate the perfectionism. I think.
So there is this idea that we've kind of been talking about somewhat, but I have a name for it. I would like to call it continuity. And I mean continuity of you as a person from one day to the next. I mean future you and present you and past you. All three of you have to kind of team up to make this work, because it doesn't work otherwise. And it hinges around you. If it's Monday and you have 2 hours to work on the thing that you're going to work on, your main quest, then you think about those 2 hours, and you think about future you, Tuesday you, and what that person is going to need, and about how it's, how one term for drinking that I've heard that I like is stealing happiness from tomorrow. Like you have a lot to drink, so you feel really good, but then tomorrow you feels terrible. So that idea applies a lot here, in that Monday you is going to be Tuesday you, and you got to make sure that Tuesday you is in a pretty good spot. So what you don't want to do is first of all, you don't want to go nuts and spend all day on it and blow off your normal jobs, that Tuesday you has to make up all this slack and deal with all this, stuff that you weren't excited about, right? So Monday you has to be responsible in that way. Monday you needs to not do all the fun stuff and then push all the really crappy, frustrating stuff that you don't want to deal with to Tuesday you, because then Tuesday you has to start with that, and that sucks. So, and just that idea of maximum recoverable focus, I think, is really important here too, where, you know, even getting, it doesn't matter if you're excited or not, if you just go nuts and you're just, you know, your mind is on fire, ultra focused on everything, but that leaves you fatigued the next day, then you're kind of screwed for the next day. Like you have to maintain that continuity from one day to the next, where whatever you do today has to set up yourself for tomorrow. And I think I mentioned this before too, but every single day as I'm starting to wrap this stuff up, I leave messages for tomorrow me of, hey, do this thing first, because it's really easy and it'll get you back into it. Like, I left this for you. This is going to be fun. Just do this little thing. And then tomorrow me, you know, and it happens every time, but you know, I wake up, I do the little morning routine, I stumble into a coffee shop, I get my coffee from the rude barista, and then I sit down and I start on this thing, and like my mind is not working yet. I feel just slow, and like it's the focus train, right? Like, it's not really moving yet. I'm kind of sitting there, I'm staring at this big page full of stuff, and it's really hard to start getting into the really hard problems. But if I have something simple that's concrete, that's solvable, of, hey, here's the first thing to work on, just go right here, start doing this thing, it's this beautiful on-ramp into that more focused mode. It only takes 10 or 15 minutes before I really start to get moving, and then I'm starting to think and getting excited, and then I'm right back into it. But just leaving that little ramp for myself is such an amazing thing. But it's never what you want to do. What I want to do is just work and grind and like do all this stuff while I'm really excited, up until where I get really fatigued and maybe I hit something that makes me frustrated, and then that's what I leave for tomorrow me, is just me getting stuck and hitting my head against a brick wall. And that's the worst possible thing for the next day. Right. That, I actually think that is the single most important thing in this entire endeavor, is being able to maintain the continuity from one day to the next. And I have not missed a single day of working on this since I started at least 2 months ago, which is incredible. I mean, there's been bumpy spots where I've gone a little too hard and then had a hard time getting back to it or whatever, but every single day I've been able to do this, and it mostly is from that concept of taking actual time and real effort to set yourself up the next day to where you aren't fatigued and you're able to get back into it, and everything just moves smoothly from one day to the next.
I have like 5 more topics I want to talk about, so I think we should cap our time off at this.
Okay.
And continuity.
All right, and we'll talk about them soon, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing I wanted to just take note of is this extreme, and I guess you had the same exact experience, but this extreme excitement at the beginning of a project. And I haven't even started yet. Yeah. So I'm predicting that either the next time we talk about this or the next time after that, I will be at a very low point. I just
that could be, and that's fine. I mean, yeah. That's been my experience as well, as these kind of high and low points and everything. But I would just say right now, if you're at the high point, that's one state of mind, and there's downsides to that state of mind, and there's risks in that state of mind, but there's also really great things about being in that state of mind. So just ride that wave, have your notebook all the time. Again, you'll forget 95% of what you think of.
I got my notebook.
All right. I know you're on board with that too, but just, a reminder of how utterly important that is. But just get that stuff
right
down.
Here.
Okay. All right, good. Mine is, right here.
Okay.
I have 2 now. This is the StarCraft one. This is the everything else one, because I was just filling up journals with like StarCraft stuff, because now I journal when I play, which is gotta be the only person in the world who does that.
That's my second one, and this is my first.
Okay.
So
right.
Yeah, we will both have 2. Okay, good.
All right. So just ride that wave, be in that mindset. Know that you won't be there for all that long. That's okay. You'll get back to it at some point, but just be in that state of mind right now.
I like that. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So we'll get into these other 5 topics that Dan has to talk about soon. Anyway, so first off, thanks everybody for kind of talking about your main quests. That was really, really cool to read about and see. And I know we're giving away some glasses, but that's pretty small potatoes in comparison to just, hopefully we're encouraging people to start working on these things and share your experiences too, because it doesn't feel like there's a lot of guidance out there for people doing this sort of thing. It's just not the kind of thing we tend to talk about. So thank you for that. As always, you're welcome to leave comments here or in our Discord, or you can email us at theoveranalyzerspodcast@gmail.com. Remember, we do have merch for sale, a whopping 2 items. We have the glass and we have the coaster, which I love the coaster.
I got it.
Oh, there we go.
I got
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Because-
I just got mine in the other day. I think they're super cool. That's a biased thing to say, but I think they're cool. So you can check that out too. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. We will see you next week.